Play. It is the most divine activity around. When we play, we dive into our hearts. We find our true selves, and we change the course of history. And here at Philosospiel, we let our inner child loose. So, how about we philosophize? This is Philosospiel, video game philosophy, and I'm your host, David Leibowitz. Time to get the spiel for your enlightenment. Game start. Hello everyone, this is David Leibowitz with Philosospiel Video Game Philosophy, and I have my good friend Alim back to talk about Aria of the Soul.
Glad to be here, David. Honestly, Persona's a really fun franchise to talk about. I know Fire Emblem and Triangle Strategy are the ones that I've been on the past, but, RPGs in general, there's a lot to talk about with them.
Exactly. And both of us are fellow singers, so I felt like we need to talk about Aria of the Soul. So
It is
I
such...
guess
Go ahead.
this, yeah. Yeah, no, you go. Sorry.
Just remarking on how incredibly the track is delivered every single time. The different tracks all have a lot in common, and we'll be discussing some of the different versions today, but I will say that even when there are differences, uh, they really hit.
I think I wanted to do a surprise for you. I don't know if this is a version you've heard. It's still the basic version, but um we should
I've only really listened to the ones from mainline Persona and Smash, so uh, I might have, I might not have. I have not heard this one.
I felt like as a fellow performer, I might as well see it performed what the
Yeah,
actual vocal technique is. Would you say so? All right.
yeah,
I might get copyrighted for this. We'll see. That's what happened with the Okami games one when I showed a concert, but
I suppose.
we'll see what happens. All right. Are you looking at it?
Yep.
Let's do it. It's a preview, so not the full version. I can show the full version also, but it's not with the video.
Great. Oh,
Yeah, what do you have to say about it so far?
it's
I mean,
very
it's
classic. The rounded vowel posture immediately gives me like opera vibes, and yeah, it is an aria, so of course. But like, they definitely got somebody on who knows what they're doing.
all right. That's the preview.
Yeah, that's
So,
really
yeah.
This is definitely a hard piece to do, honestly, and I'm so impressed by how well they managed to pull that one off.
Yes. I guess I mean it's I mean it's a very I mean it's very base I mean it's still very what about pulling it off? Because I mean both of us are counter tenors, so we've both attempted to definitely do this to do this track. I mean, you know, with our falsettos. But what about the vocal delivery is like even though it's wordless? What about the track is still like needs precise technique?
So, the first thing that I'm going to point to is this is the obvious one that everyone's going to point to is the high notes. But I think there's something more to it than just the fact that over high. It's instead where they come in the song. They aren't placed directly after breaths usually. It's like uh It's in the middle of a phrase that you're hitting those high notes, meaning that you have to, at the very beginning, have enough breath control that
Mhm.
you're not going to lose out on it. A second thing is ensuring that you don't go ha instead of ah when you're singing. So any aspiration that you're doing, I think that's what it's called, where you get a little bit of air out while you're singing, that will really A, it'll cause your vowel to sound a little bit less rounded, and B, it'll really mess up in terms of breath control. But that's super tricky because when you're doing those high notes and when you're doing it for such an extended period of time, you need to have full control over your voice in order to not aspirate. Like I don't think I've ever, when I've tried to sing this, done it without aspirating at least 3 times, and I even heard her do it once. So like, it is absolutely a challenging piece, even though like in terms of like how it sounds, it's very simple in terms of progression. It's not especially fast, but that's the third thing that's difficult about it. Oftentimes, slower songs that force you to really like stay in the note are harder than faster songs. With faster songs, you can be a little bit loose, you can make mistakes, and things will generally work out okay. But with slower songs, no, every note is held and they have to be on pitch. And they did such a good job. It might sound basic, but literally staying on pitch with this song is really, really rough. I can't hear you. I do see you making the motions though, so appreciate it.
You can't.
Like,
And
did
so,
you
what
hear?
was difficult? What was still difficult about doing that?
Did you hear how I was going? Sorry, that was terrible. uh, I was stepping down rather than what she was doing, which was a lot more melodic in nature. It was
Mhm.
flowing. It wasn't just note, note, note. It was you were going down. So
Is
like
there anything?
I'll do
Is there anything you'd like to go back in the video for, or should we go to the classic one that most people are familiar with, even though
you
it's the
know what?
same?
It's Persona 5 time.
It's Persona 5 time.
It is always Persona 5 time, according to Atlas at least.
This is correct. Okay, chicken. What?
I do want to.
So, so you had this whole nice little argument about the progression, about the nice flow of the song. And what if you had that chart with you that had that
I don't
actually
have
had,
it anymore, unfortunately. That was a couple
but
months back, but I can still kind of map it out verbally what I was talking about. Is something else that I did want to mention though that I just noticed in terms of technique that adds on to that argument a little bit. So remember earlier when I was talking about how flowy the voice sounded in the live performance?
Mhm.
Well, in this version, you can hear that yes, there are times when it's definitely very flowy, but there are also times when it's deliberately stepwise as well. Like where rather than going, ah, sorry, it's the difference between those is what I'm talking about. When you're going melodic all the way through with a line. The second one, you're stepping to each individual note. And I think that's
Mhm.
really, really interesting because it isn't always done, especially in this song. And it's not even done in the points where usually you do it because it's like a breath control thing or because you need to do it. No, it's being done deliberately, it sounds like, which I think is a really, really interesting choice because we can get into a little bit of the meaning behind the song and where the song plays and all that in order to kind of get a little bit of an understanding. But I just wanted to note that choice before we got into anything. David, anything you'd
Mhm.
like to add about it?
I think it really gets to. I mean, what you get from this song is just. I I guess you have to think about this in the context of even in the original Persona in Megami Iburoku Persona, this
Bunroku, yeah.
was Iburoku was still a different track. The more and more we go through the games, how absolutely different a track this is to the rest of the styles of game of things. I mean, obviously there's Battle Hymn of the Soul, which we will cover, of course, which is similar. But even then, that still has rock in it, which still fits the more slightly modern, um, I guess, Meguro stuff going on. But what we see here is that it sounds otherworldly. It sounds like it sounds like something is being channeled, something beyond comprehension that can only be sung through a simple, like a siren coming to you and serenading you from the bottom of your heart. Would you agree with
That's
that?
definitely a beautiful way to describe it. I think that this is one of the key things about music is that sometimes you have to talk about it in terms that aren't so technical, like stuff like the notes and stuff like the uh, aspiration, all that sort of stuff. Those are important details to the piece and to the performance of the piece. Sometimes you got to talk a little bit about how it makes you feel, you know? And I think
That
Aria of the Soul is one of those pieces that for me, it kind of transports me a little bit. It puts me in almost this different headspace.
mhm,
And I kind of like that, you know?
exactly. And I feel like Um, I guess before we get to the argument that you made that I didn't understand about how this might think about the going up and down is but also before I have my argument about where this might fit in more of a Jungian like actually like where this really just gets to the heart of things. But we'll get to that a little later. I guess before we get to other versions, but before when we get to see the heart of things. That as I was saying, it's something that's so beyond comprehension that this takes place. It's the Velvet Room. It's a place between dream and reality. So it's sort of in a place in which you could think of it as a meditation space in a sense, where we are actually in the where I can fundamentally comprehend. Because when these go in, if in Persona 4 and Persona 5 when they're able to go into this actually delve into the collective unconscious, you could say, or at least to ask manifestations of it that is still not at the heart of the collective unconscious, because they can you're going into something that's not being harder to be seen. But the Velvet Room is sort of a place in which you are able to. I would think I still need to further understand myself. It's sort of coming to mind what the Velvet Room is, but it's where one can sort of one is able to negotiate between what is sort of I think talking about the world of the abstract and the objective.
I'd like to
Because
thank you, Cyber.
yes,
You're bringing in the Velvet Room now, and that is where the real meat of the philosophy comes in, because you need to know the Velvet Room in order to understand this song.
yes, of course. But would you agree that that's based that I guess because the Velvet Room is supposed to be an in between what well, I think in Persona 1 through 3, it's the closest thing you get to the collective unconscious outside of facing Nyx in the face in Persona 3, which is literally just according to the Japanese only guide, the collective conscious itself.
I mean,
So,
I would say Persona 2, I would argue, has a pretty decent grasp on the collective unconscious, especially with, the whole rumor system and the Joker system that comes up in, I believe, Innocent Sin, and then in Eternal Punishment, you've got the uh, the ways that rumors become reality. I'm not sure which one it was, but
Yeah,
regardless,
but
the
do they
idea is
but do they ever delve in directly into? Well, I guess when they talk to
not
Philemon, they're basically in the
physically.
collective unconscious.
Yeah, yeah. I would argue that they are interacting pretty much directly with the collective unconscious by the end, especially with like again the conversations with Philemon. That
Nyarlathotep,
was a good
right?
point.
Yeah,
Uh,
Nyarlathotep as well, right?
Gnarly, my boy. But uh, also with the ways in which they interact with it on a more surface level through the Joker conversations, manipulating rumors, all that sort of stuff.
I mean, but every game, the whole point is every Persona game interacts with the collective unconscious.
No, I
Like,
agree. I was agreeing with you.
yeah,
But
I know.
I
But
was
like
saying that
Persona 4 and 5 is like when they really like a good portion of the game is more directly. I guess the Taurus is also the collective unconscious, but it's still also less so. It's a
well,
very specific.
I am
It's
going
very
to
specific.
spoil Persona 1 for folks. Sorry about that. If anybody cares, please stop. But it is not worth your time to play. It is a fun game in some respects, but it is a dated game in a lot of others.
I'm still gonna play through it even after you tell me this. So
You
what
know
does it
what?
tell me?
I'm glad for you, David. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm not
I found
enjoying it at all. It's pain, but I'm doing this for philosophy.
you don't need to play it to get the philosophy, my guy.
I know,
Come
but
on,
it's the
just
only
read the
right
manga.
way. It's the no. That's the out. I did this with Persona 4 with the anime, and I did that cop out for Persona 4, but I'm
Why would you
Persona
do
1.
that with a better Persona game? Come on.
And you don't even like Persona 4 that
I
much.
don't like Persona 4 that much. I think it's fine. I think it's a good Persona game, but like this is the take that's gonna get this whole stream canceled. It's gonna get everybody here dead. Persona 4 Golden is probably the second weakest Persona game. Second only to Persona 1. And I think that Persona what do you call it? Persona 4 base was better than Persona 4 Golden. Not because
There
of
are people
Marie.
who say that. There are people who say it. There are people who say that.
It's not a popular take, but it's facts. That's all I'm saying.
You're not the only one who said that so far. So
Regardless, we're getting a little off of Aria of the Soul. So I guess
But
what I do
but what is either way? What is the Velvet Room, and what sets it apart from anytime they're talking, they're interacting with shadows or anything? What do you feel about what the Velvet Room is?
I'm so glad you asked that. It does vary from game to game. And I think the manifestation of the Velvet Room in the different games is interesting. Persona 5 is an outlier in this regard. We can kind of actually ignore Persona 5's Velvet Room to an extent, because the jail prison cell is not meant to represent anything specific to Joker. It's instead meant to, spoilers for Persona 5, represent, what do you call
Society. I mean,
it? Yaldabaoth.
society.
No, it's supposed to
Yeah.
represent Yaldabaoth's prison, because
Yeah.
Yaldabaoth was not supposed to break free of those chains, and like it's basically like this is where the most dangerous prisoner was held, right? Within society, and the idea is the inciting incident of Persona 5 is that Joker is put in this cell rather than like it actually being, who is supposed to be there. As a result, all this stuff is going out of whack, and Joker's only in the cell so Yaldabaoth can keep an eye on him. For that reason, we can still discuss the Persona 5 Velvet Room, but really, when we're talking about the Velvet Room, it'll be more. It'll either be general concepts or.
You know what actual Velvet Room I think is really well, which was part of was part of um concept for Persona 5's Velvet Room.
Mhm.
Persona 5 Phantom X's Velvet Room. Because
No, come on.
water. It's an aquarium
No.
that is literally. This is exactly what we're getting at with real. I mean, I'm not saying anything about the merits of the game. Just the Velvet Room is pretty, and the fact that it's an aquarium.
No, and
Literally,
I hate it.
the Sea of Souls. It's literally the Sea of Souls.
So good, and I hate the fact that it's coming from Persona 5X of all places. Come on.
But
But
I mean,
no, I
that is
think
honestly the most perfect one outside of Persona 1 and 2, which just actually you see the Velvet Room singer Belladonna sing. Like, that's good because of that. But
I
come
think
on, water, water,
fire, earth, air.
air.
Long ago,
But
the
no,
four
no, but yeah.
nations.
This is why, but yeah, this is why Reload's focus on water is important, because I've talked about it on. We don't need to talk too much because it's not water's not directly related to this song, but it sort of is.
I mean, yeah, the idea of the soul and specifically water with the soul, it fits.
Yes.
But
S-
just getting back on topic for a moment. Persona 4's Velvet. Sorry.
No, continue. Yes, sorry. Okay, we're of course this happening. Shenanigans happens. Okay, continue.
Yeah, that's just how this has always been. It's fun. Uh, Persona 4's Velvet Room, much as I'm not a Persona 4 fan, I think is one of the most revealing Velvet Rooms in the series. It's a limousine, and it is specifically moving towards some kind of destination throughout the game. Uh, Persona 3's Velvet Room is
An elevator.
Persona 2's.
I mean, I thought Persona 2 and 1 is it's a room.
Yeah, it's an actual room, but what is the room kind of like?
I mean, it's a club.
Exactly. What's interesting about these things? Persona 1 and 2, it's a club. These are the Persona games when you're playing with adult protagonists, or at least kind of adult protagonists.
Well,
In the case of Persona
Persona
2 Innocent Sin.
yeah.
In these
Persona
games,
1 is children.
Mhm.
Persona 1 is high
Ah,
school students.
oh wait, yeah, you're right, yeah. You're
No, that
100%
Persona
right. I'm
2
confusing Persona 2.
is the most adulty we get until Strikers.
Okay, Persona 1, only reason why I'm saying that that still fits, even though, like, one of the games, I forgot whether it was Persona 1 or Persona 2 in that instance, but you're right, it is Persona 1 that has kids. But even though that's the case, I still think that fits, given, number one, the impetus for everything was it was all a dream. Spoilers again for Persona 1. Everything takes place in a dream. Nothing matters. Nothing is important. I'm kidding about that last part, but
Dream of a butterfly.
yeah, it is all inside of a character's head, and as a result, the Velvet Room is something that is also very different from the rest of the series. But Persona 2, it's a club for adults. Persona 3, it's an elevator for students who are basically going through Tartarus to stop the Dark Hour and all that. And Persona 4, it's a limousine for somebody who has just moved into town. There's something very common about these things. They're
It's
all
destination. There's a place to go, right?
yes and no, because let me ask you, what would the place to go be for the club?
That's what I'm thinking. It's not only the elevator and the limousine count for this is the place to go.
Instead, let's look at the ways in which they interact with their respective protagonists. A club for adults. This is something that's, albeit the most tenuous connection, it still fits to some extent. A club is a place where you're allowed to let your mask down, where you're able to relax, and you're able to hang out with friends, all that sort of stuff. For adults, it is the epitome of the vibe of relaxation. An elevator for Persona 3. This is the exact opposite in a sense. This is instead pretty much representing the work that each of the Persona 3 protagonists are having to have to do. That this is, what do you call, taking them down into Tartarus, that this is the uh, depths that they're going down into using this elevator. But the
And
interesting
I mean,
thing,
it's also the clock. I mean, it's also just the clock of life until everything's over,
right,
right?
but the interesting thing about that is that if you look at Persona 3, where is it that the protagonist and all the other characters are most able to like find friendship and bond with each other? It's through the act of being members of Seas that they actually really are able to get those bonds, you know? So, in
Exactly.
a way, they're most able to be their true selves when they're at that work in Tartarus and fighting to stop the Dark Hour. That's when their true selves shine the brightest. Persona 4, it's a limo taking you to his destination. And that destination is somewhere in the world of fog. He's navigating through this world of fog throughout the entire story, and this is his time when he actually like gets to once again prove himself versus somebody like Adachi versus somebody like shoot the TV thrower guy. I forgot his name for some reason. Uh, the
Namatame.
delivery man. Thank you,
Namatame.
Namatame. Persona 4, ladies and gentlemen, not my favorite game. Uh, but my point is that in each of these games, the place which is shown in the Velvet Room is reflective of where the person is able to be their true self to some extent. Which is why, actually, I will even say that this goes for Persona 5 as well. That in Persona 5, the jail is where Joker's true nature as a rebel is able to kind of shine to full force. No?
Exactly. That's that. I mean, to me, it fit nice. It felt a little hard hitting, but it felt like, yeah. I
It's
mean,
on the nose, but
society
yeah, it fits.
society hates you. So
The
so
ultimate
you,
point. Sorry?
and then the aquarium doesn't really fit the themes of since Anthem X is just P5 again. It doesn't fit that, but it fits so well. Just aquariums are relaxing, fish are nice to look at, and water is the unconscious. So
Listen, I get the symbolism, I get it. And again, that's more likely to be somebody like Joker's Velvet Room in a sense, because like the jail is not it wasn't created for Joker. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like this is a common theme across Velvet Rooms, and I think that this is important to understand when it comes to understanding Aria of the Soul in particular. When it comes to the Velvet Room, they represent the place where you're able to let your mask down and be your true self, but also the place where you are at your brightest. They're the place where you shine, right?
Mhm.
And so that is where I think this discussion should start, because Aria of the Soul it's an aria, right? And
Mhm.
what's the usual thing with arias? What is it usually doing in an opera?
How about you answer it? I'm not the I've watched so much Marco Meatball and I still don't still don't really. Yeah, tell me.
So arias are basically they happen during very dramatic moments within operas. They're very like uh I suppose the best word for it is like introspective because it's focused on that one character. It's all about that solo voice.
Soliloquy. It's a soliloquy, right?
Exactly. Right? And this is exactly that place. The Velvet Room is a place which is effectively an aria for the soul. It's the place where the soul is soliloquizing. It's where it is uh, coming to rest and not only rest, but also demonstrate its strengths. Right?
Mhm.
And so this is where something else comes in. What does Aria of the Soul sound like? Because I think that this is a really interesting point that I, again, hadn't really thought of when we first had our discussion, David. And that is the differences of Aria of the Soul and their reflections on the protagonists. Because I think that each of these differences within the versions of Aria of the Soul actually do a great job at representing the differences between the protagonists.
Mhm.
So, let's start it off. I think the first one that I'm going to pick is Persona 3's Protagonist because, gosh darn it, that version of Aria of the Soul is a banger. Specifically, the one that plays during the boss fight. I'm trying to remember.
We're doing Battle Hymn. We're not doing bass.
Yeah, we're talking about Battle Hymn for a moment.
All
It's
right.
coming through. Would you mind putting it on?
I'm putting it on right now. This screams, I'm an angsty teen and I want to do angsty teen stuff.
You can hear it, right? It's so rock.
Yeah. But then,
Where does it play?
I mean, it plays against the next avatar.
Okay. And what is happening during that moment? What is the
They're
significance?
literally all thinking they're about to, everyone's gonna die. So,
Yeah.
everyone's gonna die of nihilism. So,
But
yeah.
why is the leitmotif from Aria of the Soul of all things coming out here? Given
That
what
is
we already
true.
discussed about its meaning.
Why? Because it's the protagonist soliloquy, right?
It's a dramatic moment in the protagonist's soliloquy, yes, but there's something else to it. You want me to go for it?
Sure.
Okay, here's the thing, my friends. What is the theme of Persona 3? Death. Death
Yeah.
is inevitable. It is something which is hanging over. It's a specter over the entirety of Persona 3's story, whether it be the characters in Persona 3 fearing death, or the ways in which they attempt to cope with the fact that death is going to happen. This next boss
And,
fight is the ultimate.
and then, of course, the opposite of that, in which we prevent death from happening because everyone is lost meaning, which is this is the secondary theme is the meaning crisis, as I argue.
Right. I will concede to that just for now. But the first theme of death is kind of more important here, specifically because of how it plays into the story, and more specifically, how death is viewed as important and a natural part of the cycle within Persona 3. What's one of the main reasons people got mad over Persona 3 Fest? It's because they didn't.
You can't control your party members.
I mean, that's the case for base Persona 3 as well. Why did people
The
complain that Persona 3 Fest?
the answer.
Yeah, what did people hate about the answer?
Everyone was sad.
1 and 2?
I mean, everyone's sad because the main character's dead and all their characters are ruined. Everyone's quote unquote character is ruined.
So the first part is that everyone's sad over the death of the main character, and the second part is that the main character sacrifice is somehow, according to some fans, lessened by the answer because the main character,
Is a seal. He's a seal.
not that he's the seal, but instead that he could come back. If people are if the minds of people are changed, then the protagonist can stop doing that, basically.
Cue Persona 3 reload speculation.
Not right now. Not right now. But hey, if you want to do it in the comment section, if this is a video or whatever it is, if it's a podcast format.
Is Makoto coming back in Persona 3 Reload?
No, he isn't. Spoiler alert, it's not going to happen. They're not that dumb. There's a reason they remade Portable. But my point is that death and accepting death is seen as such a core theme to the story that the fact that the characters don't seem to be accepting death and that the story doesn't seem to be accepting death, at least on first glance, I'm personally the answer defender, but at least on first glance, for those who detract the answer, is something that's viewed as a major problem.
I like the answer too. Yes.
Yeah. But here's the thing. This is accepting death is a major theme, and Aria of the Soul is playing during the peak of this fight against what is effectively the death of everything.
Death.
Why?
Yes.
But what Aria of the Soul represents.
I mean, it would be. I mean, it for one thing, it would represent is back to my second argument. I mean, if we look into our souls, if we look into the collective unconscious, we will find meaning.
I disagree with that take. I agree with it in principle. I agree with you that if we look into the collective unconscious, we will find meaning, and all of that is true, but I don't think that that's the reason why Aria of the Soul is playing here. I think that it's because, as I mentioned earlier, Aria of the Soul and the Velvet Room are tied. The Velvet Room is where the protagonists of each respective game are at their most them, if that makes sense. It's where they're their most true selves, where they're able to be the trickster, the wanderer, the one who basically stops the dark hour. In this moment, this hard moment of fighting death, that is when all the masks can drop. There's no need to pretend, because at the end of the day, what's the worst that's going to happen? You lose, everybody's dead, right? Like, no matter what, you have to try. And you have to be yourself in order to do that. Aria of the Soul is playing.
There is a lyric from I've already talked about Burn My Dread and Burn My Dread Last Battle on this channel, but there is a lyric from Burn My Dread Last Battle. The mask is in heavy rain, which means that it's basically being washed off, which in a sense, like that's what's happening, right? I didn't make that connection there, but that makes sense now. Like now you're saying, like, oh yeah, the mask is basically being washed off.
Mask is no longer necessary. They're fighting with all they've got, and they're being their most true selves in order to do it, because that's where they're most effective. And that is why the Velvet Room theme, aka Aria of the Soul, is playing, because this is a battle where death is bringing out the best in our party. That is the theme of Persona 3, is that death
Exactly.
is inevitable, and the ways in which you deal with it, like accepting it and moving forward and using it to that understanding to grow, is critical to your own success moving forward. And the fact that the party is accepting that is the reason why Aria of the Soul is playing here.
Makes sense.
As for the styling, why is it super heavy rock? Well, there are two reasons. I can give you the Doylean explanation, and I can give you the Watsonian explanation. Which one you want?
The Watsonian.
Ah. Why did I think you were going to do that? Uh, So the Watsonian perspective is that this like very like like this very like rock heavy sound is in universe kind of representing the energy of the protagonist during this fight, their determination, their raw like will, and the way that Aria of the Soul is playing is reflecting that. It's reflecting their soul. It is their aria of their soul, and in this moment, their aria of their soul is a rock piece, because guess what? This is death. This is the one thing that nobody can overcome, and they have to do their best to move forward despite it.
So what's the Doylean explanation?
Oh, the Doylean explanation is that it's the final boss theme, and final boss themes rock music, it goes well. What? You think I
Oh,
was
so the
gonna go for something
Watsonian.
deep there?
Oh, the Watsonian is the more deeper. Okay.
Yeah, the Watsonian is in universe. The Doylist is out of universe.
Hmm.
In other words, the Doylist is, what was the author trying to say here? The Watsonian is, okay, in universe, what's actually going on here? In universe, what's happening is they're fighting the literal incarnation of death. That's gonna be when you're gonna be letting your most kick ASS side out, you know?
Yeah.
And out of universe, you're fighting the literal incarnation of death. That's when the rock music comes out. Like, it marries nicely.
All right. Should we continue with? We haven't really gone to the actual singing part of this song yet, or is it the same? And we should not get to it yet.
I'm cool with going with whichever direction we want to go. But I think that the next one I'd like to ask about is dancing.
Persona 4 Dancing's remix.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
Absolutely a banger, let me tell you.
I was interested that we're going, but we should still get to
Main version?
well, no, we did the main version. We did Persona 5, so well. Okay, it's about to kick in. I mean, you now hear the moments of contemplation and thought. I would say.
I do not hear anything.
What?
Did you forget to play it?
I'm playing. I was playing it.
Oh, okay. I guess I just can't see it on my screen. That's a little unfortunate, not gonna lie. But well.
No. Are you back? Can you see now?
I can see and hear, but like the only thing that's showing on my stream is still the battle hymn.
Yeah, no, we're doing the battle hymn right now.
Oh, I thought we were moving over to dancing.
No, I want to get to the singing. I want to get to the singing part. I just want to get to the singing of how it might be different.
Right. Forgive me about that.
Let me. So I think that's enough of that one. I think, but what I hear from the actual singing of that is, it feels intentionally imperfect. Am I wrong to say? It feels tense, like intentionally tense, like
I think it actually
she feel
reminds me. Mhm.
of what? Yep, sorry.
Smash Brothers remix. To be completely honest with you, the
I mean, we can play that version. We can
Nah,
we
no
can.
need, no need. I think my version was sufficient for the people at home to tell.
Yeah, okay.
Regardless, though, I will say that uh, the way it was supposed, the frantic energy of it is there. I think the main reason why it's so frantic and why there's a little bit of a difference going on is because guess what? Where do you think the protagonist's headspace is at when they're fighting God?
Frantic.
Yeah! Congratulations! Arya the Soul represents the protagonist and their journey. That is my argument.
All
And
right.
I think I can prove it to you by looking at the way the notes work. But first, it's time to dance.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't listened to this in a while. Oh yeah, this slaps. Yeah, no, this is the best version. Wait, no, this is one of the best versions. There's some good versions from the anime, I think, and some from some other concerts. Like Party for Everyone's Souls is pretty good.
It hits, no?
But now I can still feel the connection with the unconscious with this nice ambient beat at this moment right here.
It's the way in which it kind of varies from the initial part, which is very, like disco, and the second part, which is a little bit more contemplative, and now it's coming back to the more disco elements again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're pausing this. The beat is going too hard. I can't focus while the beat is going absolutely nuts. But I think it's pretty clear what that one's showing, huh?
But what about I guess how is it different? I guess you want to make a point? Do you want to make a point?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I probably should. But two things. Firstly, the first reason I wanted to introduce this version is just because it slaps so hard. I just think the people at home needed to hear it. If they didn't
This
get
is
a
true.
chance to, this is important. This is absolutely critical. But secondly, I think that there's something to be said about the way in which it swaps between the more frantic, like dance vibe and the more quiet, contemplative vibe that I mentioned earlier. I think more specifically that it's going to demonstrate a point that I was about to talk about later with the way that the singing goes through, but I think this is a good transition into it. The way in which the song goes from the right, it keeps on climbing up, and then it goes back to, and then the aria actually starts, right? So there are two reasons for that. One, to build up to the actual aria and build some excitement. But the second is more interesting to me. It is going higher, and once it gets high enough, that's when the aria can actually begin. That it is almost like you're at your base level at the beginning, and then as the song continues to progress and as the scale continues to go higher, eventually you reach a state where that becomes the actual aria, where the can start, right? And that I think is really important to note because that progression is, I think, critical to the metaphor of this song. That higher means that you're entering the actual aria of the soul. What that means is that, therefore, that the higher notes are representative of the internal to some extent. But there has to be some degree of contrast when the song starts to go back down, right? After all, it is a video game song, and video game songs loop. But there's something to be said here. Vid, do you have anything to add to that idea, or do you want me to start
No,
going
this
into the low notes?
you go, keep on going. Keep on going.
All right. Uh, so if we look at the sheet music a little bit, it is pretty clearly like going up at the beginning, as I mentioned. It's a
Are
chromatic
you looking
scale of
at Are you
chords.
looking at the Are you looking at the sheet music right now?
Yes, I am. Do you want me to share my screen?
Please share.
I am using what do you call MuseScore's version because it's pretty nice. But let's quickly look at this for a moment. We're going we're going up from at the start a B natural, and then we continue moving up, and then the point right before the aria starts is which ends at a D. But before that, like the starting note of that measure is, I believe that's an A natural. High A natural. So we've gone up almost a full octave between this little chromatic progression that we've got going on here. And then the actual aria can start. But the aria itself also does the same sort of thing where it goes up and then it slowly comes back down. If we look at the end, for example, it goes. Let me actually play it. Did you hear how the backing in particular?
I can only hear you. I can only hear you sing.
Oh,
I can hear the actual.
am I not sharing sound as well?
Yeah, you're not sharing sound.
That is on me. Apologies. But the
Yeah, it's fine. Also, I'm not even recording this computer sound, so everything is going to be put in afterwards. But I guess, yeah. But I mean, I
because the way in which the progression of the backing part works is kind of critical here.
I can hear it now.
It goes back down, and then once it goes back down, that is when the song is no longer an aria and it's going back to the instrumentals, and then it works its way back up and goes to the high part again. But tell me, do you think that that lower component, the way that the aria is climbing back down, is meant to represent? If going up is going internal, that's the natural contrast. You're the philosophy guy. I'm leaving this one on you.
Well, we've talked about this before. I mean, I would think going down would be the descent into the unconscious. That's what I would think it would be. It's
But wouldn't that
my
be going? Isn't the unconscious still a part of you, and therefore wouldn't that be a part of the internal? Wouldn't that not really serve as a direct
so
contrast?
so then then going down is the external, according to you?
That's my argument.
Okay.
I think it makes sense thematically with a lot of these games. I'm going to start with Persona 5 of all games here, just because it's the one that I know best. Forgive me, I've played through Royal at least 3 times, so compared to the other games, it is the one that I know like back and front. But when it comes to the ideas and themes of Persona 5 Royal, the main theme with respect to the unconscious and the self is about, okay, how can I not only learn about myself and be my true self, but help other people be their true selves, right?
Mhm.
And the other part is, okay, what about the mass, right? What do those represent? Those represent how you are putting on a persona, for
The
society.
actual persona.
Hey, right? The masks are the literal masks that you wear for society, and you tear them away in order to summon your persona, right? Uh, and so, what I think is really important about that is that this concept of the external world, the self that you present, and this internal
Mm.
world, the self that you yourself are, the true self.
Mm.
I think that
Yes.
contrast is something that's very noteworthy. And I
Mhm.
hear the so I'd like to ask Cyber, anything you'd like to add?
Hmm. I think my edition is something separate. I think I'll leave
I would
this to
love
you.
to hear it regardless.
How about how about we say hello to one of our Velvet Room attendants again before we do that?
Which one?
Margaret.
Ah, first and foremost,
Have you heard this version before?
I actually have. I've never played Arena Ultimate. It's too hard. That's why.
To me, it's better than Battle for Everyone's Soul. I'm sorry, it's better.
It has. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Ben. You might have said that, right?
Yeah. So, what we get from this, I don't know what we really get. Is that so? We so far have a fully orchestrated. I mean, if you get to each of them as, wait a minute. So, there might be something else to this though that might actually contradict. If I say this is this, then wouldn't and Battle for no, it still makes sense.
I want to hear
For-
your
for-
theory
for Liz-
before I start tearing.
No, I mean this would be this would be Margaret's battle. This would be Margaret's Aria. I mean this would be
I agree.
Maria's Aria. But
I
then
100%
but
agree.
here's the thing: Elizabeth's battle theme in Arena is Battle for Everyone's Souls. But
Okay,
but the thing is lore wise, it still makes sense that it can be both her. Because she's holding on to Thanatos. She has gotten the power of the Fool, and she's also determined to bring the protagonist back, which she might do in really low. We don't know.
It's not
But
gonna happen. I would be so upset if it happens.
But yeah, but either way, I mean, you feel the harpsichord, you feel the more elegance of Margaret,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think it's just very nice and still. You sort of actually hear. I think it's actually more of a remix of Battle for Everyone's Souls than just the aria itself. Like it's got the Battle for Everyone's Souls stuff going on more.
I'd say Battle for Everyone's Souls is its own song using the leitmotifs of Aria of the Soul, and this is Aria of the Soul using the leitmotifs of Battle for Everyone's Soul. If that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So my idea. So before I even brought you into this project, the specific thing, I was thinking, well, there is something else. I was hinting at it earlier about how it's something that can't be spoken about. That's something that is beyond comprehension. All right. Are we ready to put our philosophy hats on, everyone? For reals.
Oh
All
no, I don't
right.
have a hat.
Not you don't need an extra. Okay. So, we have to think about the role of music in general. I talked a little bit about the objective versus the world of principle versus the role of the abstract, or the world of the objective and the world of the subjective.
Okay.
Jung partially does slightly get his inspiration primarily from Nietzsche. Nietzsche originally got his understanding from Schopenhauer, and Schopenhauer spoke about how the thing that moves people the most and gets at the heart of ideas is music. And a piece of music is when a person listens to the piece of music, they for an absolute second, are taken out of this the suffering that is present in all of life, because they have gone into the hearts of existence. Jung doesn't talk too much about this, but in a way, Alim is my ultimate critic. He's gonna call my BS right here and now. I love it.
There is any BS behind it.
What? If there
There
is
is
BS. All right, let me finish my argument then.
In that case, go ahead. Don't call my name.
And Nietzsche does get a little bit at this again, that about the work of art in distilling the human experience, something deeper and more understanding. Sort of think about Plato's principles about the ideal. What we're dealing with now is to build off of your argument about each aria of the soul be in the Velvet Room being the place where one can be the most clear, where one is most distilled down to be their self. The Aria of the Soul is a song, is a siren, is a serenade for you to be yourself and to delve you in to the unconscious. This is of anything else. I mean, as I say in the thumbnail, it's the music from the soul. It's the music. It's the Sea of Souls itself speaking, in a sense. Not just
Okay.
in. I mean, because archetypes, in a sense, to get our. I mean, if we think about archetype, there's a sense that people actually listen to classical music. I read an article. There's a thing about a therapist who have classical music singers, and that they are able to exercise active imagination where you're able to basically envision archetypes, which is what basically all Persona is. They're not sleeping, so they're using their active imagination. They're able to glimpse into the collective unconscious. They're able to glimpse into the archetypes. That the classical music is where one is actually I mean, there's people talk about how classical music is the best thing to study to, because it gets you the most focused. I'm not that in this when you hear
Do you
the
mind if I
aria.
just quickly interrupt you for a second, just for a correction on that?
Sure.
The primary reason, at least for vocalists, why classical music is something that they like to push is not necessarily because of its meaning, although, yes, it is very meaningful. I don't want to take away from classical music and classical music fans. Just quickly want to point out that the primary reason is actually technical, that for classical music, it often is very, like, rounded vowel posture, which teaches good habits. It has certain characteristics in terms of the ways in which notes go into each other and flow that are, again, very much good technique for the future. Classical music is a great place to start because it is where a lot of really proper singing and some of the most beautiful, rich singing can come from. Not necessarily, again, to dish classical music's meaning, but technically, it's something very important for people to learn. Anyway, back to you,
And
David.
then, all right, but either way, it's in a sense we can hear through music, through song, something that archetypes. There are some people do talk about sort of musical archetypes that are sort of. I haven't looked too much, so I can't speak too much into it. But there are some sort of means in which music can get you through. I mean, through access. It's still a form of play. It's a form of accessing the unconscious, which allows us to be the most creative. Now, I understand that this fits for every musical instrument, I mean, piece in any video game, in anything ever. But again, we get back to the point of this song has no lyrics,
It's
which
an
means
aria.
that it's
Usually
an
they don't.
aria. Usually they don't, exactly. So it's very much intelligible and something that only the protagonist could understand, truly. That
I just to interrupt you again, earlier when I was mentioning arias and their role in classical music, and specifically in operas, this is the reason why I was mentioning it, because I was thinking that this might come up. Uh, in arias, in general, they are not usually voiced. They are
Hmm.
usually not given lyrics. They tend to be uh, solos once again,
Mm-hmm.
and they usually are representing something important about the protagonist. But importantly, operas are shows that are meant to, well, show something to the audience. The aria is not necessarily for the protagonist's sake because they know what they're feeling. The aria is for the audience's sake to get into the protagonist's soul to understand what the protagonist is
Hmm.
feeling. Back to you, David.
Yeah, but either way, generally, it's a voice from the heart. It doesn't matter that's unintelligible. Fine, that it's unintelligible doesn't matter, but from just again back to what I originally said about something about the otherworldly nature of it. It does still sound like it sounds like to me. It sort of sounds like the unconscious speaking in a sense. I mean, it's which that's. But again, I'm not discounting anything you said, but it does seem like why I originally wanted to do this in the first place, because I'm breaking my rule, and I'm not gonna only time about lyricless songs is because of the important that there is some sort of Jungian idea to it, but
Que no los dos.
exactly.
Why not
So
both?
I'm saying that's what I'm saying. Why not? I'm saying it can be both.
Here's the thing. I do actually think that there's a lot of merit to your explanation, and thank you. There was even some things in there that I hadn't known about.
What about the
But
Schopenhauer? Is the Schopenhauer thing at least a thing to start with? Like, doesn't that make sense? About how music, when people listen to a piece of music, they get to the more heart of reality.
I think that that's definitely a theory. I think music is this is something that every philosopher will agree on. Music is unique, and I think every person really uniquely able to touch the soul. When
Hmm.
it comes to listening to song and music and the way in which it makes you feel, that is very key. And this is an aria. Arias are wordless. They are solos. They are purely the notes. The notes are meant to evoke an emotion. They are primarily meant to get you, the audience member, to understand the emotional state, the soul of the character who is presenting that aria, who is currently in the drama, right? So I do think actually that there is something to the idea of the unconscious playing a role. Here's the thing though. Uh, I think that if you are going to make that argument, you have to make the argument that the aria itself is not reflective of the individual, but rather of the individual's soul resonating with the souls of others. In other words, that higher component that I argued was that specifically the aria itself, which is specifically the soul of the protagonist or the one who's singing the aria, in the case of Margeret, who I don't necessarily count as a protagonist. Uh, Instead, you have to count it as the resonance or the communication of the protagonist's soul, which still fits, mind you, with classical opera theory and with how operas work, but it does get a little bit more murky. And I think that this is where uh, David and I philosophically differ, is that when it comes to series and video games, I like to kind of stick towards uh, more substantiated things, and David is very, very willing to uh, understand and go off into places unexplored. He's a lot more brave than I am in that regard. If I can't feel that, okay, I can solidly back up this claim, I am not going to make the claim. But David will make claims that, honestly, oftentimes do end up coming true and are very surprising to me. Uh, but that I would never in my wildest dreams be able to make just because of that difference in philosophy. I think that this comes down to it as well. My take is essentially a more mild version of your take, but this is a representation of the character themselves versus a representation of the character with respect to the unconscious, with respect to the collective, uh, because there's the aspect of communication through music that's present.
Hmm. All right. Is there anything else or should we just jam out to some more Aria of the Soul versions?
I am very willing to jam out to more Aria of the Soul, but there is actually something else that I did want to mention. Uh, because there is one other argument here. First off, I didn't fully make the internal external case as well as I could have, so forgive me for that. I want to talk a little bit about how the external world is affected by the protagonists in every game and how that is influenced by Aria of the Soul at some point. But honestly, I feel like that's beyond the scope of a discussion since that's more going into the narrative of the games rather than the themes of the song itself. But I think more interestingly is interpretation number 3, and I think this is the one that David was coming in with most initially. That being that one that I discounted earlier, but I think there might be something too still, uh, of the high being the self, like the aria reflective of who you are, and the low being the collective unconsciousness rather than being the external. So, David, do you want to talk a little bit more about the way that the collective unconsciousness plays, or do you want me to give my thoughts on it?
Why don't you give your thoughts on it first, since you were pushing against it the last time we talked about it?
True. And the thing is, the reason why I'm still a little bit hesitant is because, uh, like music, a lot of this is down to interpretation. It's not an exact science, it's how this makes you feel. And as we've kind of spent time listening to Aria of the Soul and reflecting on it further, this interpretation has at times made more sense, at times made less sense. But I do want to make sure it's still here, so that way, uh, you can kind of track the journey that we went on, since this was kind of the starting
I
point for
here,
both of us.
here's what I would say in regards to um the difference between those two about the internal versus the external. So I think we think about this sort of with Tartarus, and it's sort of how it's the underworld, but it's reversed. It's actually as you go up, you're
Higher, yeah.
going higher. This I'll talk about this. I do want to talk about this a little. That this actually this is related to the Seven Earths idea from. It's I mean it's direct. These are directly the Seven Earths from it's from Abrahamic thought, but apparently more specifically said by a sheikh or either way from an Islamic parable about as just as there are seven heavens, there are seven earths, and with Adama at the lowest or whatever that is actually how it's ever in Arabic. But
So, if you guys are interested in learning more about the Seven Heavens and some of the myths behind them, I think the best place to start, especially if you're looking into their relevance in modern day, is with Little Qadr, which is directly translated in Arabic to the Night of Power. Night not being like the medieval kind, but like nighttime. I think that that is a great place to start since it is in Islamic faith detailing Prophet Muhammad's journey through the seven heavens and
Mhm.
what those mean and all the different details of that. I don't think that this is necessarily within scope right now, but yeah, I'll toss it back to you, David.
All right. But I mean, in a way, weirdly, it feels like going through Tartarus is where the seven heavens and the seven earths combine. But to that's a whole other discussion. Um,
Can't wait to be on that podcast or watching it rather.
yeah. Um. Yeah. But either way, we see that in a sense that going up, that as we go down into our unconscious, we feel compelled in reality to go back up. The collective unconscious is, as Freud originally sort of thought of it as like heaven, but he had it in the other way towards the underworld. But as we
Interesting
delve
argument.
into what as we
I'm
delve as we
sorry.
what
Persona 1 plus ratio.
what about Persona One Plus Ratio?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, in Persona 1, everything's a dream, right?
Yes,
How do we unlock the personas in Persona 1?
saying our name.
Ah, but it's not just saying our name. What specifically do
No,
we need to do?
remembering our name. Remember.
Remembering our name, right? It's about retaining the self within that unconsciousness, right?
Hmm. Right, so
So
I do realize that is the game that actually things happen where you're in the unconscious the whole time,
you
basically.
are directly in the unconscious the whole time. Yes, you are inside somebody's dream.
Yes.
Uh, and the Velvet Room is almost a step out of that. It's where you are, again, able to take that break, able to kind of relax, take a breath, and you'll be fine, right? Because Persona 1 is very much a traditional dungeon crawler type experience compared to something like Persona 3, 4, 5, where you've got time to actually rest in the calendar system and all that. No, Persona 1 doesn't give you any of that crap. Persona 1, you will find random encounters on the street as you're going back to school. And those random encounters will beat you up and steal your lunch money. Okay?
Yeah.
Velvet Room is your reprieve. What's important about that is the place where you're able to relax. You're able to let those masks down. You're able to let those guards down, right? But what's also interesting is if you're in the unconscious and the Velvet Room is the only place where you're not under threat, that means the Velvet Room is the only place where you're not interacting directly with the unconsciousness. In other words, it's an in-between.
Which is what I was saying. It's the in between exactly. It's between the objective and the subjective.
Here's the last step. Here's the Persona 1 plus L plus ratio.
Yeah.
See, your argument was basically based on the Persona 3 idea of going up, of that naturally when you're going down into the deeper into the unconsciousness, you also have to go up, right?
You have to go go well you're going up because you're compelled towards the divine. That's why.
Okay?
But so what's Persona 1
And
L
yet,
plus ratio?
in the Velvet Room in Persona 1, you're getting closer to reality when you go to the Velvet Room. The Velvet Room is the exact opposite.
So what's your point?
My point is that I agree that it's an in-between state, but I disagree fundamentally that the Aria of the Soul and that the Velvet Room itself represents something that's more tending in one direction than the other. I think that the Velvet Room as an in-between cannot be something that we view as this journey of sorts. It is a resting place on that journey. It is not.
Sorry, that's my Kirby rest point. I played that for in middle school.
Oh, which
The
game?
piano.
I was a huge Squeak Squad fan as a kid.
No. This was from Superstar.
Oh, okay.
No. I'm saying
DS
I played the
version or
piano.
SNES version?
I played the piano piece. I'm saying I played the piano piece.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Sorry about that.
yeah, no, but I played the DS version of it. But yeah,
But yeah, you get
but
my
yeah,
point, right?
yes.
That rather than the Velvet Room representing the journey of the unconscious, I think that it's instead representing a resting point from the unconscious.
Okay, that does make sense.
I think there's also I'm gonna go on a roll here if you don't stop me right now. There's also Persona 5 with Mementos, and guess what? At the end, the palaces. Guess what? You can enter at the beginning of Mementos in the palaces, the areas where you're in the unconscious. The Velvet Room, the area where you can rest and be like, okay, we're chilling. We're gonna progress, make personas. We're gonna be good
I'm
with the
gonna
rest of the
chill
dungeon.
by being in jail, but yeah.
Listen, that's just where Joker feels the most comfortable, I guess. Like, I don't know. Persona 3, it's an elevator.
Joker does not apparently feel. He's kind of like he wakes up like get me out of here, man.
Yeah, I know, that was the joke. Remember I mentioned at the very beginning the exception of Persona 5, that this is not meant to actually be Joker's Velvet Room. This is not his relaxation place. This is not his idea of a good time.
Now,
He's
on
not
the other
happy.
hand, Phantom X, say you're also going to palaces, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
chill.
in general, the Velvet Room is a reprieve. And it is where, rather than dealing with the unconscious, you're able to kind of collect yourself and come back to yourself. It is
Mm.
a manifestation of who you yourself is, and Aria of the Soul is all about exploring who that self is. The Velvet Room is also about exploring who that self is through the different persona fusions and through the different arcana that our protagonist can take on and represent, eventually becoming the world, which is basically a summary of all of them. That's my argument, that the Velvet Room is not the journey, but the destination slash place where you're, going away from the journey,
Hmm.
Now, I'm aware there is a contradiction here, and that contradiction is the second worst Persona game in the franchise, Persona 4.
Which is
I-
literally about the journey. And
Yes.
Persona 3 in Fest, the game is also called The Journey. And it's also an elevator towards a
Okay.
destination.
Okay. On 4's Velvet Room with the limousine. I'll address that one first, because of how much I hate Persona 4, I am unfortunately far more intimate with that game than I am with Persona 3. But firstly, the Velvet Room in Persona 4 is moving. Yes, the limo is moving. But what's it moving through? The
The
fog.
unconscious.
The
Oh, the
fog
fog,
of the
yes.
collective unconsciousness. It is specifically a barrier to that. Like, you're not entering the fog, you're not dealing with the collective unconsciousness. You are in the limo. You are chilling and relaxing outside of that. You're still moving, yes, but it's not the
You're
journey
still
itself.
moving. Okay, yes. Right. Hmm.
That's the most obvious, what do you call, counter that one could pick, and it actually kind of is the most obvious as well as a reprieve in terms of how it literally acts within the space around it,
Because when you're when I'm lying in a car, I don't have to move. I myself don't have to move.
Exactly.
I
You're
get to
not the one
relax,
going on
especially
the journey.
yes.
And the elevator, it's kind of the same sort of argument that you're not the one going on the journey in the elevator. The elevator is the relaxing place you wait while the journey happens, or before the journey happens, or while waiting to get to the journey. I wait on an elevator while going up to work. I'm not actually working while the elevator.
Yes.
It's why elevator music is usually that sort of relaxing, like doo 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 like that sort of like boring nonsense. Because like it's just meant to like you're relaxing. You're not supposed to be like very in it all in the
Or you
elevator.
or you're really tense with other awkward people in that elevator, but that usually never happens. Well, it could happen.
Depends on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert.
This is true.
But yeah,
I as an extrovert don't really feel tense. I'm just like, hey, cool. But
I have
but I
made my
but I
argument.
but I think of movie scenes where people are go on elevators and they're very tense, or they're like, "Ah." or
Honestly,
maybe that's
whenever I think of
yeah.
when I think of elevator scenes, I think of Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire one, just standing in the elevator awkwardly. Like, it's just great.
Yes.
Anywho, I think that I've made a sufficiently decent case for my argument that the Velvet Room and the Aria of the Soul is specifically focused on the internal and like acting as a reprieve. And I think that you probably think that you've made a decent argument for it being the unconscious instead, that it being a part of the whole. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or?
I think you convinced me of the other way though, but
Let's go!
I think you convinced me. But I still would like to continue the argument of if it honestly though, but again, more based upon that the collective unconscious is actually the high, or it can be more the middle between that that the self is actually the low notes and the collective unconscious are the high notes, because when we go higher,
That's when we find our true selves? Is that the argument you're making? When we
go
enter
high.
the true collective unconscious?
I mean again, when we go towards divinity, we go up. I was actually trying to kind of say that. I was actually trying to say that at the
And this is
moment.
where I was interrupting you. Here's the thing. Tartarus is hell. Tartarus
Yes.
is not the good. It is not divinity. It is the exact opposite. And you go up Tartarus. In Persona, things are reversed oftentimes. And actually, going down is the good direction. Going up is the bad direction.
Yeah.
L plus ratio plus
And
Persona
then
1.
the answer happens, and it's a flip Tartarus.
Listen, I love the answer, but philosophically, it does have some interesting implications. Let me put it that way. I think they were first focused on giving people a new campaign, second focused on how that works. I think that there are a lot of good points in it, but I also think that it does contradict some stuff in Persona 3. Let's be honest.
Nonetheless, either way, I still think it can be. I do believe that the unconscious has a place in Aria of the Soul. I don't know if I think it could be, because because if we think about this more Japanese, or just I mean, when you
Collective
meet,
versus the individual in Japanese society?
there is that, but there's also just meditation. I mean, how do I act when I'm, not to go deep into my own stuff, my own Jungian ways, but when I interact with the collective unconscious, I meditate. So when one is relaxed, that is when they also are I still think I still do believe it is. I agree with you that it's not directly in the collective unconscious. Actually, is in the most. It is the most. It is more and again, as they say directly, it's an in between dream and reality. Nonetheless, it is. You are still fundamentally to make each persona, to fuse the personas.
You have to interact with the collective unconsciousness to some extent, obviously, because those are literally archetypes that are common and are present within mythology.
You are transfixing with the archetype. That is when one is one is.
You are literally becoming it to some extent. You are taking
Yes.
on those aspects into yourself. But
yes,
that's why I would make the argument that it's the external versus the internal, because yes, there is a role that the collective unconsciousness might play, and you could refer to the collective unconsciousness as the external if you want, because it is something separate from yourself that you are also part of to an extent. It's this weird
I would put the collective unconscious on the internal.
Interesting. I think that's also a philosophical difference, because again, yes, you are a part of that. Like if you think of number theory, you're a subset of the set of human beings, of the set of conscious beings. But At the same time, you are, as a member of that subset, a distinct component of that subset with no other equal members within that
And then
subset.
this is where the collectivism would come in. That's where the collectivism, we have to understand this is made by Japanese people
Yes, but
who would
that's
who would more
I'm talking about
more
set theory right now. And also, Persona as a franchise has always been uniquely individualistic when compared to other Japanese franchises. I am just going to point at Persona 5 and end that comment there.
and I'm going to point to Persona 3 and say how collectivist that game is, but you know what? I'm not gonna argue this too much. Persona 3 is literally about the bonds it's the most
Okay,
importantly about the bonds we have
all of the
and
Persona
not
games are
about
about
and
the
not
bonds that we have.
I'm aware, but it is not about showing your true self. It is about how can I just simply live and how can we as a society coexist
I'm going to
by
disagree with
having.
you here.
Mm.
But mainly because of something that you said that I actually agree with, that it's about the bonds that our protagonist, our player character, forms as an individual with each other. I think actually, if you want to look at the most collectivist game, you have to look at Persona 4. Yuck. Am I complimenting
I,
Persona 4 again?
I still think Persona 4. I still think Persona 3 is slightly more collectivist than Persona 4, but yes, Persona 4 is very collectivist. It's still
Here's the reason
important.
why I'd say Persona 4 is more collectivist than Persona 3. One of the confidants is literally the investigation team as a whole, rather than any individuals within the investigation team. Yes, the individuals within the investigation team are their own people with their own social links and all that. But
Persona 3 has a cease social link as well.
did I just straight forget that? I think I just straight forgot that. No, you're right. You're entirely right. Never mind. I apologize for interrupting you. You were cooking.
It is. Persona
wait.
4 is it. But wait, what?
I have my counter.
Okay,
Persona 1 plus L plus ratio.
is that the most
I can
collectivist? Persona
no.
1 just.
It is the proof that the franchise is fundamentally individualistic.
Okay,
Because what is the means by which you can summon your persona?
say your name.
And
Yes.
we're about to say it. Remembering your name, right?
Yes.
Remembering your place as an individual within the collective, not just being a part of the collective, not just being drawn into the collective unconsciousness, but retaining an element of the self. And that is what Persona's ultimate thesis is in terms of
That's fine.
protagonist.
If it's still fundamentally yes. No, Persona is still fundamentally more on the individualist side. Yeah, it is.
There we go.
I still, as I've talked about with Lady Virgilia, you cannot forget some of the more Buddhist and collectivist still sprinkling
Oh, of
that is in
course.
it.
Obviously, like
That would not be there from a more from an actual Jungian game made in the West. It's
right. And
still
if you look at any collectivist game made in the West, you'd probably see some influence from individualism nevertheless seep its way in, right?
yes.
Because it's something that's fundamental to our perspectives to some extent based on where we're raised, you know? But I think that what I am trying to point out here is that the author's intentions when coding Persona were not to create a game which was fundamentally collectivist, but rather to create a game that was fundamentally individualist. And therefore, I think that while yes, collectivist interpretations are valid and are components of the text, I do not think that they are as key to the understanding of the text in terms of the nature of the unconscious versus the conscious.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Okay.
Again,
Well,
I might be wrong. Like you're the philosophy guy. I'm the music man.
this is true. I'm not. Here's what I'd say. Everyone, just please watch Lady Virgilia. And the video I did for Lady Virgilia on Persona. I think we talked about some interesting stuff.
Always a
With that.
worthwhile shout out. I love Lady Virgilia's channel.
Yes, exactly. She but and there's still something about. Okay, we should not go to, but there's something about Persona. Okay. Let's just jam out. Because I feel like we strayed too far. Just jam it and then call it.
going higher. And staying at that peak. Yeah, the entire orchestra. It hits.
Yeah. I guess we don't need to play the concert version of Battle for Everyone's Souls. I think that's a better version, but we don't need to play that right now.
Uh,
I think
anything else that we want to say as like last words?
I will say that it's again. I will just ultimately say also Alim is a debate bro, so there's also that he could just beat me in debate.
I have never debated anyone in a formal setting in my life.
Oh, you have?
Just argue.
You're just good. You're just good at it. You're just good at it, though. You're just good at debate.
I tried founding a debate club in my high school, but never took, and I never took debate in college. So yeah, I took an argumentation class, but that was all writing. So you know.
I mean, I was the head of the debate club in middle school, but never actually gone into any debates in high school. No, never.
Oh,
even
he's the
touched it in
debate
college.
bro.
I'm just not good at it. Debate. I'm not gonna go. There's a funny story that I can tell you, brother. About when my beliefs were a little different and I was in debate club. It was funny. But I guess that's about it. Do we want to? I guess
Yeah. Any
I
last
st-
remarks? Thesis statements?
fundamentally, no matter what, it is again aria of the soul, the singular soul, and fundamentally that soul is connected to other souls.
I think
Though
I
the
agree with all of that.
fundamental, though the fundamental thing is, if you do say from the more individualist ideas, Kawhi would say that therefore the collective unconscious exists, therefore we're all connected. Jung actually would not say we're all connected. There's not some hippie. The collective unconscious is not some hippie thing that connects us, waves that connects us all. It is just how
That's what music is for.
That's what music is for. That's what That's what this is for. All right. So basically, we find ourselves that the collective unconscious does not mean Jung does actually want you to cut ties from others. To fully find yourself, you must find your own self. To transverse with the archetypes, you must be able to understand your place in society, but then fundamentally make your own self and tear yourself from society. That's where Persona 5 is the most perfectly illustrative of this.
I think Persona 1 is. I think that you need to both enter the public unconsciousness, you need to be able to enter that unconscious realm to be interfacing with everyone else and still remember your own name.
This is true. This is true. And fundamentally, I'm still the unconscious has something. I'm not going to take away the fact that the unconscious, though. If we have to understand,
You can't have a conscious without an unconscious.
Exactly. But persona and personas are again personas. A persona. I guess this is honestly the best argument I can make for why they're called personas. Because personas are different masks we can put that the aspects of society given from archetypes. They do not. A persona does not exist in the unconscious, as I talked about with my Edogawa video. But it does but fact is that it is a creation of the collective, which is creation of society. But when one is able to individuate and understand and integrate by understanding to separate the self from the persona, from society, and that is when one's own aria, one's own soliloquy is able to negotiate.
I have
I
one
guess
last
that's
point that I'd like to add on top of that because I think that's a
yes.
wonderful summation. Let's remember, that's how you start your journey. That's when you become the fool. That's when you have access to your velvet room, when you have access to this unconscious and you're able to have that like space for your soul. But you don't end the journey as the fool. You end the journey as the world.
The world, exactly.
And so
Or
step
the
one in the
universe,
journey,
or the universe in Persona 3, or the
that's
universe in
true.
Persona 3.
But step one of the
Um,
journey is remembering yourself, being the individual within the collective. Step two of the journey, and that's the part that isn't represented by Aria of the Soul in my argument, is that instead of being yourself within the collective, now the collective is a part of yourself. That you're learning from these different personas, that you're taking on these different archetypes, and rather than them being something separate from you, they're becoming a part of you. You're growing from them, but you're nevertheless retaining yourself. The unconscious is fundamentally a component of who you become by the end of the game. And that's why, honestly, remember when earlier I said, yeah, I think that the unconscious definitely plays a role. That's the role that I think it plays. I think the unconscious plays a role in your character's development, in their growth, in that collectivism. And I think that by the end of the game, you are yourself, and yet you yourself have changed from the beginning. And the way that you've changed is through the bonds that you've forged with others, and through
exactly.
that idea of both being yourself separate from society, a rebel in society in Persona 5, a newcomer to society in Persona 4, an outcast in Persona 3, but also being a member of it, nevertheless. All right, I guess this is where we plug our stuff.
Yes, I mean, you're on my channel,
Yeah.
so
So,
but Alim gets to plug his stuff.
yeah. First off, David is from the Philosospiel podcast and has his own YouTube channel. It's really great. I want to check it out. Just to plug a little bit of my own stuff on there, we did Shadows of Valentia critique a while back that was a lot of fun. But I think my favorite one that I've done with David is the Triangle Strategy one that we did like a year back with Joeytoms. Do you remember that?
Of course, I remember it. We still might follow up on it and do that second parter. We'll see.
Hey, I'm always down. I'm always down to talk more triangle strategy. If you
Yeah.
like any of what you heard from my end, I sing at my YouTube channel, Foolishly Foolish Folly, and I stream video games and also sing there as well at my YouTube channel, at my Twitch channel, excuse me. Once again, Foolishly Foolish Folly. Yeah. Any last words?
Keep on singing. Just keep on singing your song.
Sorry, voice is a little tired.
This has been David Leibowitz with Philosospiel Video Game Philosophy. Peace!